If the only time you'd ever want to eat your emergency food is during an emergency, I think you're doing food storage all wrong. One of the things I think we sometimes forget about preparedness is that in an emergency, you're not just trying to survive, you're trying to keep life feeling as normal as you possibly can. And sometimes something as simple as putting a familiar, comforting meal on the table can do exactly that. There are certain foods that just taste like family. And today I'm turning a recipe that's been a favorite in my family for years into a completely shelf-stable meal in a jar. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. One of the things we do here is help you look at your emergency food storage a little bit differently. And meals in a jar is just one way that we do this. These jars, they're magical because they're completely shelf stable. They just sit on the shelf, very unassuming, but just add water and you can cook up some pretty incredible meals. So incredible, you're not going to want to save them just for emergencies. And you shouldn't. These meals can also save you on a busy night or when your dinner plans fall through. They can be a wonderful and thoughtful way to bless someone else who could use a meal. And because you made it from scratch, you control the ingredients, you control the seasoning, you control what does and doesn't go into your meal. You can fill your shelves with shelf-stable versions of family favorites at the ready whenever you need them. Just add water. The recipe I'm sharing today is a classic quiche filled with savory bacon, gooey cheese, and caramelized onions. And it's usually referred to as a quiche Lorraine. That's the technical name. It's something that my dad makes very often for family gatherings, almost every time we get together. And my sister does as well. It's rich and delicious, but it's simple and classic at the same time. And this recipe is also super versatile. It can be served for breakfast, brunch, lunch, supper, anytime you want. You can serve it warm or room temperature. And today I'm going to make mine crustless, which is going to make it very low carb as well. Now let's get started. I'm going to show you how to make this, but stay tuned because I'm also going to let you know about a giveaway that we're doing where you could win some of these ingredients and maybe even a whole lot more for free. For this recipe, I am starting out with my wide mouth quart mason jar, just like so many other meal in a jar recipes. And I've also got my canning funnel just to make it easier to get everything into the jar. But before I get started putting anything into the jar, I'm going to set that aside. And I've got something I'm going to do with a few of the ingredients first. So I've got a small mixing bowl here. And I'm going to start with my powdered ingredients, which is going to include the eggs. Now, when you make a recipe like this, you want to make sure you have a really good brand of eggs that taste good if you eat them just as eggs. There's a lot of egg products out there, scrambled egg mixes, egg substitutes, whole egg powders. Lots of them are fine if you use them as an ingredient in like a cake or some cookies or something like that. But when you're using them in something like a quiche, a breakfast casserole, an omelet, this is something where you're really going to taste the eggs. So you need to make sure that they taste and cook up the same as fresh eggs. So this is a brand that I use, which does fit the bill. And I will leave a link for these down below. And you can kind of see they are just these nice loose crystals. They've got a special process that they use that makes them just turn out so much better than any other egg product I've ever tried, even like home freeze-dried eggs. I'm going to be using a half a cup of the egg powder, which is the equivalent of 4 eggs. So I've got a half a cup of my egg crystals. And the next ingredient I'm adding is my heavy cream powder. And this is the reason mostly that I'm doing this step separately, because your heavy cream powder can tend to get clumpy. And in a recipe like a soup or a stew or a sauce or something like that, where it's being stirred, once that heats up, those clumps are going to melt right out and just melt right into the mixture. But in this type of a recipe, we're not going to be stirring it as it cooks. It's going to just go in the oven and bake. So I want to make sure to make it as least clumpy as I can so that we don't have any issues with that. So I'm going to be using 3/4 of a cup of the heavy cream powder. It's one thing I absolutely love about this measuring cup set that I have here is that it has 3/4 of a cup and some of those odd sizes that you don't always have. And I'm also going to be using my same canning funnel because one of the things I love about this is that it has a little mesh strainer insert that goes right in it. This is great for lots of canning projects, but it's also good for lots of other things, like how I'm going to strain the clumps out of this heavy cream powder. So I'm just going to rub it through here. And I just prefer this to the type of mesh strainer that, you know, where you have the long handle sticking out one side. It's just easier to keep this from tipping and falling and making a mess. And now I'm just going to whisk the cream and the eggs together. And that's going to kind of help keep that from clumping back up. I've got one more thing that's going to go in here and get whisked in that's also going to help. And that is my instant milk powder. I'm using 1/3 cup of the instant milk powder. And I'm also going to whisk this in as well. All right, I lied when I said there was just one more ingredient going in because I forgot I am going to add my butter powder in with this as well because it's another powder. So it's just a good idea to get these mixed. This is not necessary with every recipe, but with this one, I think it's going to work better doing it this way. So just pay attention to what, your individual recipe is telling you to do. But if you ever have a recipe where you have issues with clumping, this can help. I am just using a tablespoon of butter powder. Now, if you had some clumps in your butter powder, you could do the same thing and put that through the wire mesh strainer as well, but mine doesn't seem to have any clumps. So I've got that all blended and whisked together pretty well. Now I'm going to bring my jar back over and I'm going to get this mixture into the jar. So there's our base mixture down in there. And you can see that about half fills this jar. And that will compact down a little bit. It's pretty loose because we whisked it around, so it got loose and fluffy. But that's ready to go. So now let's move on to the rest of our ingredients. So for this quiche, I'm making it to be like a classic quiche Lorraine. So the ingredients I'm going to be putting in are going to be some freeze-dried bacon. Now you need to make sure that you're using freeze-dried bacon because the regular bacon bits at the store, they are shelf-stable until they're opened, but they've got too much moisture in them really to be able to use in a meal in a jar. But because this is bacon, I am going to consider this as a recipe with a little bit of not as long of a shelf life as a meal in a jar would typically have. Most meals in a jar, you're going to typically get at least around 5 to 8 years shelf life if you seal it with an oxygen absorber. With the bacon, I'm not going to push it that far. I'm going to say definitely seal with an oxygen absorber. With this one, don't use vacuum sealing or something. Use an oxygen absorber and try to open your bacon from the package you bought it in, which is all sealed for long-term storage. Try to open that up, use it as quickly as possible into your meal in a jar and get that sealed right back up with an oxygen absorber just to limit the exposure of the bacon to air, because that's what really causes rancidity. And that's the issue or the danger with the bacon, because not necessarily because it's high in fat, that's somewhat of a fallacy, but also the type of fat that it is tends to go rancid a little bit more quickly and more easily than some other foods that we would have. So really keeping it oxygen free is going to be the key. I might do up some jars and kind of test it out, get them, put away oxygen free really quickly from the original container to the jar, and maybe test them out further. But for the time being, I'm going to consider this recipe to be more like one that I would keep on my shelf for probably like a year. Try to use it up. I'm going to try to use it up within that amount of time. We love this dish, so that shouldn't be an issue for us. And meals in a jar are just so convenient to make like your everyday dinners easier. They're not just for emergencies. But you can also switch it up if you didn't want to put the bacon in, if you didn't want to take the risk, or you don't like bacon, or you're avoiding that for any reason, you don't have it, you can't get it. You could put any number of different things in here. You could make any type of a quiche. You could use Canadian bacon or ham or sausage or any of those types of meats, or you could just do just vegetables, like a spinach quiche or something like that. You could use just vegetables and keep out the meat entirely. Lots of different options. So I'm going to be using my freeze-dried bacon. So I'm doing 1/2 cup of the bacon, crumbled bacon. And next I'm going to be adding some freeze-dried caramelized onions. And this is a very unique product. This is going to completely take this to the next level. Now you'll notice that these are seasoned. You can probably see the pepper and bits on there. So these have a really nice flavor to them already. They've got plenty of salt and pepper and seasoning. So that's the reason why I'm not adding additional salt and pepper to this recipe. If you don't have and can't get the caramelized onions, you want to try to do it maybe with just some plain freeze-dried onions, then you're definitely going to want to season it with some salt. Maybe start with 1/2 to 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper, or a little bit more, to your taste, and then maybe like a pinch of sugar. But because these are already seasoned up, I am not going to be adding that. And next, I'm going to add my freeze-dried Swiss cheese. So this is shredded Swiss cheese. Freeze-dried shredded cheese is an amazing ingredient to have in your pantry because it's real cheese. It's not Velveeta, it's not processed, it's just real cheese that's freeze-dried to be shelf stable. And it's absolutely amazing. Like if you taste this tastes has such a really good Swiss cheese flavor. I love it. It's actually a really good snack, just dry. And it rehydrates beautifully and melts beautifully when it's done. It's a great ingredient that everyone should have in their pantry. Shredded freeze-dried cheese of some kind. If you don't like Swiss, because I know some people don't, I think this is kind of quintessential to this particular recipe, but you could use other kinds of cheese, freeze-dried shredded cheese in your recipe. Whatever kind you like or have on hand would work just fine. And I'm doing 3/4 cup of the shredded cheese. And then the final ingredient that I'm going to add to this recipe is going to be just a little pinch of nutmeg. Just a little pinch, a little dash. This is pretty classic. It gives just a little touch of flavor. Not much, but it just adds a little nuance. So feel free to leave that out if you really don't like that. But this is pretty common in dishes like this. Just a little touch. All right, now this jar is ready to go on the shelf. So typically, if I was going to be storing this on the shelf, obviously I would add an oxygen absorber. And I usually use a 200 cc oxygen absorber for this size of a jar. I'll add a link down below for those. Today, I'm not going to be storing this on the shelf. I'm going to make this one up for you and show you how this turns out. So I'm not going to add the oxygen absorber, but you definitely want to do that. And you want to label this with what the dish is. And you want to make sure you have the cooking instructions either on the jar or with the jar or somewhere handy. Printed out so that you're not stuck in an emergency and wanting to make this and not be able to find the instructions because they're on your computer or something. So definitely want to do that. And here it is, all labeled and ready to go on the shelf. But of course, I am not going to put this on the shelf. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to show you how to fix it and how it turns out. So let's get started. I've got a mixing bowl here. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Of course, if there were an oxygen absorber in here, you'd want to remove that. I'm going to empty this right into the bowl. And I'm going to go ahead and add 2 3/4 cups of cold water. Now, remember, you do have measuring markings on your jar here if you needed to use this, if you were in an emergency and you didn't have access to your kitchen tools. But I am going to put the water in here regardless, just to rinse out the last little bits of, powders that we have in this jar. All right, I've got my 2 3/4 cups of cold water. I'm going to go ahead and pour this in here. This is one where you definitely want to make sure that it is cold water when you start out. Now I'm going to go ahead and just blend this together and get all the ingredients moistened. You could use a little whisk here if you needed to get everything blended. And now I'm just going to let this set for about 10 to 15 minutes. That's going to let all of these ingredients moisten. I will stir it again, to make sure that any clumps are breaking up. But really the most important thing is that I want to let the cheese kind of absorb the water and moisten back to cheese before it starts cooking, because that's the one thing that doesn't really do well if it's not rehydrated before cooking. I wouldn't say it doesn't do well, but it doesn't melt the way that you would want it to melt like fresh cheese. So we're going to let this rehydrate for, like I said, probably about 15 minutes, and then we will get this baking. Now you might notice that this is just the quiche filling, obviously. And today I'm going to bake this without a crust. I'm going to bake this crustless because we are eating like a low carb diet and we wouldn't really eat the crust anyways. So it's just going to be easier and less wasteful for me to bake this without a crust. But I will tell you some different options that you can use for crust for your meal in a jar if you want to have a quiche, like a traditional quiche with a crust. I'll tell you that at the end after I bake this. All right, so it's been 15 minutes. I'm just going to give this one final mix. You can see it looks quite a bit thicker and it's pretty smooth. Everything's kind of hydrated and mixed and looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the pie plate. And I've got a pie plate right here. This one is 9.5 inches. It's actually bigger than I wanted, but it's the best I could get my hands on right now with what I had in my cabinet. I just am afraid it's going to be a little more shallow than I would want it. I want it deeper, but we're going to go with this because it's what I've got. All of my smaller pie plates are like non-stick coated and scratched up and not something I want to use. We're replacing a lot of our non-stick pans, and those are ones that have not really been replaced yet. I did give this a little coat of oil spray since I'm not using a crust. I'm going to go ahead and get my mixture into the pan. I have my oven heated to 325. There's a lot of different methods for baking a quiche like this. Sometimes it calls to pre-bake the crust. Sometimes it doesn't. I'm not using a crust, but sometimes it calls for baking it at a high temperature and then lowering it. Lots of different ways. I'm doing mine at 325. This actually looks like it's going to fill it a good, decent amount. So I'm pretty happy with that. Smells amazing. The bacon, the caramelized onions, smells so good. All right, and this looks pretty well distributed. I don't think I need to move everything around. I'm gonna go ahead and get this in my oven, and I will see you back here when it's ready to take it out. All right, so this was in the oven a total of 40 minutes at 325. You can see it is set. It's still a little jiggly, but that is how we want this. This looks beautiful, and it smells amazing. I'm gonna let this cool because a quiche like this is best let to cool and enjoyed when it's just barely warm or room temperature, not like piping hot like this. So I'm going to let this cool for a little bit and then we'll dig into it. All right, this has not cooled long enough, but it smells so good. I literally cannot wait anymore. So I'm going to try to cut into it and hopefully get a piece out in one piece, because that's really a big danger with not letting it cool enough, because this is a very, very sort of tender, delicate food. So I'm using a really good knife so that I can hopefully cut through it really well. And I'm going to go ahead and make 8 servings out of this. All right, let's see if we can do this. Here is our beautiful crustless quiche. I'm going to give this a try. All right, let's give this a try. I am so excited. It smells amazing. Oh my God, you guys, this is perfection. It tastes just like what my dad would make. This is amazing. These meals never cease to amaze me. That it can come out of a jar, just add water and taste like this, like taste like home cooking. The texture is perfect on the egg. It is so just smooth and creamy, and it's not rubbery at all. It's just that perfect light quiche texture. This is amazing. That caramelized onion really puts it over the top. That is an ingredient that I'm so glad that I found, because I can think of a lot of other places I would like to use that, but this is amazing. It is just perfect for me with the amount of salt that's coming from the bacon and the seasoning and the caramelized onions. Doesn't need anything else. This is perfect for me. Like I mentioned, you might want to do some seasoning if you use different ingredients that don't have all of that seasoning added, but this is just perfect. Seasoning is important. I love seasoning, but some dishes are just should be classic and simple and not overly seasoned. And this is perfect just as it is. I actually did the nutrition on this in the app that I use to keep track of my calories and my nutrition. This is, if you cut it in 8 slices like this without the crust, like I did, this is less than 200 calories per slice and really pretty low in carbs. I'll try to put it on the screen for you so you can see, but this is spot on, amazing. This quiche is absolutely delicious. You can actually think of this kind of like a base quiche recipe. If you keep the eggs, milk, cream, butter, and seasonings the same, you could swap out the cheese variety and the meat and veggies for any other quiche filling ingredients that you wanted. In fact, you could even just make like a pint-sized jar with just the custard ingredients, just the custard part of it. Use that as a quiche base and add any filling ingredients that you want to after you open the jar. Just remember that if you're using something different than the bacon and the caramelized onions, because those are so salty and well seasoned on their own, that you might want to increase the salt and pepper and seasonings a little bit. While we're on the topic of ingredients, let me tell you about that giveaway that I mentioned earlier. We are working with Dry Wholesalers, who very generously offered to supply $2,500 worth of gift cards for us to give away to our Wicked Prepared community. Isn't that incredible? That is a lot of gift cards. Dry Wholesalers offers a whole huge variety of freeze-dried foods and ingredients, including the bacon, the shredded Swiss cheese, and the caramelized onions that I used today in this quiche. They supply the US military as well, so you know you're getting great quality and a very safe professional product that you can trust. They also source everything from and process everything 100% in the USA, which is another thing that we just love. And you can win up to $1,000 worth of this amazing food for free. There's going to be multiple winners as well, which is very exciting. Lots of chances to get some free food. Whether you want to use it to make meals in a jar, or you just want to stash it away in your emergency pantry, or maybe a little bit of both. There's a total of $2,500 in gift cards, like I told you, broken down into $1,000 grand prize winner, one $500 second prize winner, two third place prizes of $250 each, and 10 runner-up prizes of $50 each, which is so amazing. And I am so honored and so excited to be able to do this for our community. There's no purchase necessary. It's free to enter the drawing. If you want to enter, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and then text FDW to my number. I'm going to put that on the screen for you and also below the video, and I will send you the complete details and how to get yourself entered into this drawing. And I really want to thank Dry Wholesalers for being so generous with our community. This means so much to us. We also have a coupon code for our viewers. So whether you are a lucky winner or not, you can use code WickedPrepared anytime to get a discount off your order at Dry Wholesalers. Go check out tryfreezedried.com/bags to see everything they have to offer. And if you want to save even more, text Insider to my number to join my insiders list. And then I will send you a text message heads up anytime there's an additional sale or coupon code. And there can be some pretty significant savings, but they come and go really quickly. So you really do want to be on that insiders list so you don't miss them. You can also check out tryfreezedried.com anytime to find the most current sales and coupon codes. So write that one down. Now, back to the quiche. If you're eating low carb like we are, or you just don't want to fuss with the crust, you can bake it crustless like I did. It's absolutely delicious that way. And you can even put it into like smaller molds, maybe little mini muffin tins, and make, it's going to bake more quickly that way. And you can make little mini egg bites, kind of like Starbucks. Just be careful not to over bake it, and you might want to do a little bit of a water bath for that. Put it in a shallow pan of water, because cooking eggs gently, it keeps that texture smooth, silky, and tender. It avoids it getting rubbery like egg products sometimes can. If you do want to do a crust like a traditional quiche, I'm going to have a whole separate video coming on making a DIY pie crust mix for your pantry. Or you could use a pre-made product like Jiffy. Jiffy makes a shelf-stable pie crust mix in a little box that you can get at Walmart. You can store that right on the shelf with the jar of filling mix. Or you can just whip up your favorite single crust pie crust recipe when you're ready to make the quiche. And there's lots of other options as well. You could do a potato crust for a quiche. I've done tortilla crusts. There's all sorts of different things you can do. I've also got a whole big collection of so many different meal in a jar recipes on the channel, everything from breakfast to dinner to desserts. I put out more recipes all the time, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, go check out tryfreezedried.com/bags. Take a look around, and then come back here and leave me an emoji down in the comments that represents the food that you would most like to try from the Dry Wholesalers website if you're the lucky winner of a gift card. And then check out this video next to see some of our most popular meal in a jar recipes that would be great to make for fall, which is right around the corner. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.